So in 2023, it was really a situation where I came face to face with the reality that we only have so much time. I had supported my mom as she was going through her cancer journey. Unfortunately, she passed away in April of 2023. So, having been with her for 10 months as she was battling cancer, it really helped me to see that tomorrow is not promised. She had all these great plans for things that she was going to do when got to the magic number in her corporate career. Once she retired, she had all of these plans, and unfortunately many of those things she wasn't able to do. So one of the gifts that my mom gave me was the realization that whatever you want to do, you should go ahead and do it because you don't know how much time you have. So after I got through the process of kind of not, I won't say I'm still. It's been a couple of years. I'm still grieving her passing, but the initial shock of grieving her passing said, well, you know what? One of the conversations that we had was about taking chances, and I was thinking like, okay, well, what are some chances that I could take? And one of them was to say goodbye to that corporate career, be willing to be out there and like putting myself out there, which as we talked about, I'm an introvert at heart,
Yeah.
really putting my all into building a business from the ground up and recognizing that, hey, this could go really well or this could completely bust, but being okay with that and not taking it as it was defining me as a person. Failure is an event, it is not a person. And so once I was able to really reflect on my mom's journey, the lessons that I learned from it, and recognize, hey, this is something that I really want to do. I'm getting older. I was going to be celebrating my 50th birthday soon. So it's like, I got to rip the band aid off. I've got to do it. And so maybe there's someone that's watching and listening to us. Maybe you're like me. You've had a desire to build this business for a while. I can't tell you when the timing is, but I believe you will know when that time comes where you've got to make a decision.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to From a Woman to a Leader. I'm your host, Limor Bergman Gross, and you're reached to the podcast where we talk about challenges that women in tech face. And you know what Tam said, tomorrow is not promised, and the story she told about her mom passing hit home really close to my heart. And because I lost my brother almost 6 months ago. And one thing I can say to you, life is unexpected and we get a lot of surprises. Some are not so pleasant, like losing someone you love. And one thing that I know for sure is tomorrow is not guaranteed, and I don't want to waste a single day of doing something I don't like. And in the episode today, Tamara Jackson, and I talk about something that I see all the time with brilliant women in tech and corporate. You know, you do excellent work, you stay heads down, you hope your results will speak for themselves, and then someone else gets the opportunity. You know, sometimes the person that gets promoted is not the person that does the best job because they did a really good job of being visible and making the right connections. And that happened to me personally. I've seen that firsthand. And in the episode today, we break down how to build visibility without bragging. Because this is the challenge that most of the women I coach bring. I don't want to brag. And we talk about how to communicate in rooms where the style is more facts and bottom line. And the mindset shift helped Tam rise to VP. And that mindset is coachability plus ownership. Because she said she didn't wait. She asked for constructive feedback. She took ownership for coming up with an action plan. And if you are ready to grow your influence without pretending to be someone you're not, you're going to love this conversation. I want to invite you to listen to this podcast, share it with any woman that you feel this podcast can help, and support me in my mission to support more women. So are you ready? Let's dive right in. Hi, Tam. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, Limor. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. No complaints. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I know that you get a lot of requests, so I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you and your audience.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I'm fortunate. That I have this problem. It's a so-called problem.
Yes.
So maybe, Tam, we'll start talking a little bit about your kind of journey first in corporate, because you're a VP in the financial institute, and that's a very male dominant field. And
Yes.
you're also a woman and a woman of color. So tell our listeners a little bit about that journey and how did you get there and what challenges did you face?
Well, it was quite the journey, as I'm sure that everyone watching and listening can imagine. So I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree in finance. I knew that I wanted to work in the financial services space. And my first thought was, well, let me see if I can work for a bank, because one of the things that I appreciated about banking is that they could be pretty big. So there could be opportunities to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Initially, my focus was, well, I think I want to be an underwriter. So that was my first goal. But because I was straight out of college, I didn't have any experience, I had to kind of take some baby steps. So I actually took a job as like an underwriter assistant in a call center at one of the major banks, because my number one goal was to just get my foot in the door. So I started there, and thankfully I was able to perform well. So within about a year and a half, I got that coveted underwriter position that I wanted. But then I quickly realized, as maybe some of the women that are listening can identify with, that wasn't enough. It was cool to accomplish that goal. But, sometimes once you hit that goal, it's like, okay, what's the next one?
What's next? Yeah.
Yeah. So long story short, I just kept moving the goal. So when my career in corporate in banking was said and done, I had spent 25 years. I had over 13 different positions. And as you shared many times, I was the only woman in the room. If I wasn't, and there happened to be another woman in the space, I was typically the only woman of color, especially as I started moving up the ladder. It was a journey. And, you asked what were some of the challenges. I think the big thing is just recognizing that men and women are very different in how we think and how we operate. For example, when we are talking to our girlfriends or we're talking to other women in business, feelings, emotions, all of that stuff is really, really important. What I found when conversating with men is that it was more about the bottom line number. What are the facts of the situation? And I can even remember in one instance, saying something, because I try to be really intentional with my words, saying something that I realized later was hurtful. And so I went back to the gentleman who was a leader in the division with me. And I went back, as a woman, thinking, oh my gosh, I need to apologize, because what I said probably was hurtful and offensive. He was like, what are you talking about, Tamara? What are you talking? I don't know. And it was literally just the day before. He had completely forgotten about it. Didn't matter to him whatsoever. He shrugged it off. Whereas as females, we tend to take things a little bit more personally when someone gets, kind of a snappy tone with us or says something that could be construed as condescending or something like that. So it was just a constant realization that men and women are different, and adapting my communication style in such a way that I could connect with the men in the room, but also still maintain great relationships with, in the instances where there were other women in the space, where I could still maintain good relationships with them. So there was a lot of intentionality in communication is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, and that's a great tip. How would you when you say adapting, what do you think women need to adapt to? I mean, what would adapting look like?
Well, so I'm going to give an example. I am not married. I am single, happily single. But what some of my girlfriends that are married often say is that when they are talking to their husbands, or for those that are dating, when they're talking to their boyfriends, that they talk to them differently than they talk to the rest of the girls. And I give that example because I think sometimes when we're in a workplace environment, we think, well, it's work, and we forget that there's still relationships. And so I would encourage, the women that are watching, that are listening, think about the other relationships that you have in your life with men. And when you really step back, you probably approach those conversations, those interactions a little bit differently than you do with your mom, your sister, your girlfriend. And so I'm not suggesting that you turn into a different person. It's just one of those things when we are in relationship. And I think that's the key to remember. When we're in relationship with people, we pay attention to what is going to resonate with them, what's going to upset them. That same type of thing has to, in my experience, also has to happen in the workplace. So don't consider this like this siloed area where it's just about going in and doing a great job. At the end of the day, your success will often depend on the relationships that you build or don't build.
I absolutely agree with you. And this is something that we have to remember, regardless men or women. I mean, we work with people eventually, right? So we have to build relationships. And one of the things kind of that you mentioned that I wanted to highlight is that men kind of think differently, operate differently than women. Obviously, we're hugely generalizing, but maybe they're less sensitive, or, we
In my
can,
experience.
we can sometimes get hurt by something a man said or how they reacted without them even meaning anything by that or intending to hurt us. But we take it very personally. We tend to interpret a lot, right? We do a lot of interpretations about what a person said or how they reacted, right?
That's a good word. I think we do tend to interpret. And I think men, it's facts. Like it's not, what was the tone, what was the feeling. And even if they do interpret that, I don't think it matters, to your point, in the same way that it matters to us. And so we just need to recognize that when we're dealing with men. It doesn't mean, though, that they don't care. I think that's often a mistake that could be made too. That means that they don't care about this project. They don't value my opinion. Sometimes that may be true, but in my experience, a lot of times it's just a mismatch in communication styles. And so we have to be careful not to read too much into it. And when we do have a question, when we're not certain of where they stand, my best advice is ask the question. Go back to that person and say, hey, we were in the meeting and we were talking about X, Y, and Z. It sounded like you might have had might have had a problem with my idea on, like, don't interpret. I love your word.
Yeah.
Ask the question and get clarification so that you guys are on the same page. And if there is an issue, then you can work through it rather than assuming that there's an issue that may not be an issue for them at all.
Absolutely. I love your tip. I think it's a great tip. Ask.
Thank you.
And ask it in a way that is just as much as possible based on facts, right?
Yes. There is a great book. I don't know if you've talked about it on the show yet, but I would encourage every woman that's watching and listening to check it out. It's called Crucial Conversations.
Yeah,
I got this book very early in my leadership career, transparently, because I wasn't leading well. It was my first team that I was leading of 18 people. I was very focused on results. And unfortunately, my team at the time wasn't performing very well. And as a woman of color, I knew like I need to make this happen. And so I was taking it very personally that it was a reflection of me and I wasn't really focused on the team. And so that came across in how I was communicating with those that weren't meeting performance expectations. Now, we still needed them to raise their performance. There still were, these are the expectations of the role. But what I learned was it's not just what you say, but how you say it, right? And so Crucial Conversations really helped me to take out some of the tendency to blame or to say, you did this, and to, as you said, really focus on the facts, focus on, things that actually happened and circling back to those. And then maybe you're asking the question on what it meant, but not assigning meaning to things or communicating in such a way that it felt like the other person was being blamed for what happened. One of the things that I really appreciated about the book, it's been a while since I read it, but it talked about saying, this is how I felt when XYZ happened. Because you own your feelings. No one can dispute what you felt, but there's a difference between this is how I felt when this happened, not a blame. This is an event. This is a fact that happened on yesterday when we were in the meeting, right? That can't be disputed. There's a difference between that and when we were in the meeting, you said so and so and so, and you were trying to make me look bad. That's a very different approach to that conversation than saying, this is what happened and here's how I felt. Not even here's how you made me feel, but here's how I felt when that happened.
Exactly. And this is exactly going back to the interpretation, right? When you said, you made me look bad, you assume that that's what the person wanted to do, which in many cases, right, we see that in most cases, I'm not saying that there are no jerks, they are.
Oh, of course there are.
But most people have good intentions and will not say something just to make you look bad. They may say something because they're either passionate about it or they had strong opinion or whatever. And it made you feel, maybe, as you said, like I felt like I'm whatever, like I'm maybe my opinion doesn't matter or I'm less important or whatever. That's how it made me feel, instead of you kind of finger pointing on someone and assuming that they had a bad intention.
Yeah. In my experience, finger pointing never ends well because the person feels attacked. And that's a lot of what's talked about in Crucial Conversation, is not putting the person in a place where they're feeling attacked, like creating, I think they refer to it as a pool of understanding. Like, hey, we're all trying to get to the same place. We all have the same goal. We want to make it happen, but for some reason, it doesn't feel like we're in the same space. So let's work through it. But if you attack someone, so think about how you would feel if the shoe was on the other foot, right? You wouldn't respond well to that. So I think one of the things that you've highlighted here, Limor, this really, really important, is remembering that it's a person, that most of the time they do have good intentions. And I think that is something that can be really easy to lose sight of when we're upset, when we're passionate about something. And it's one of those things that I had to learn to remind myself of often, is most people are well intentioned. And so when you look at whatever happened or whatever was said through that lens, it helps you to be able to slow down and to be more objective versus getting caught up in your feelings. So I think that's a really great reminder, is remember that most people are well-intentioned.
Yeah, perfect. And definitely I'll include also the book recommendation, which I also recommend, Crucial Conversations, in the show notes. And Tam, if you had to say in one sentence, what do you think was the main motivation or the main reason that you were able to thrive and get to a VP level? Because I know so many women are, I'm sure you're very talented, but so many other women. And they are not always able to thrive as you did. So what do you think helped you get there?
If I had to use one word, that word would be coachability. I shared with you guys transparently that I didn't come across Crucial Conversations because I just found it at Barnes and Noble. I was given the book because I wasn't handling leadership well in my first assignment. And so I could have said, well, how dare you? I know what I'm doing. Why are you recommending this book? I could have responded that way. And I'll be honest, at first, it definitely hurt and it took me a minute to get past it. But once I really stepped back from it, I recognized, hey, you know what? This isn't the best way. But honestly, I don't know another way to communicate. It was my first leadership assignment. And so I decided to invest the time in reading the book, learning, asking for feedback. And that was the story through all of the different roles that I had, is I was willing to ask for, and this is key, not just wait for somebody to tell me. I was willing to ask for a constructive feedback, being willing to hear the things that I did well and I did not do well, and be able to adjust to that and say, okay, I have some work to do. I'm going to put together a plan. Often the leader would help me to put together a plan. Transparently, not always. Sometimes the leader wasn't as hands-on with that. So I took ownership for coming up with an action plan, executing it, and then taking that back for feedbacks. Whether the leader helped me or not, I made it a part of my regular performance evaluation so that we would have to circle back to this topic and I could get feedback on it on a regular basis. So I just believe, and I'm thinking back on my journey of 25 years in corporate. It wasn't just me. The other women that were able to be successful were coachable. I think when we take the position that we have it all figured out, that we have it all together, as you've said, we are talented, we are smart, but there are still things to be learned. If it's nothing else, but how do I thrive in this particular role? Recognizing that there are still things that you have to learn, I think is hugely important.
Yeah. And ladies that are listening to us, I think what you just said is pure gold. And I think it's more than just coachability. It's taking ownership. It's basically taking ownership of your career, because you mentioned several things that I just want to highlight. It's being coachable is like, it's wonderful. Like, right, you're open, you want to get, other perspectives and get feedback, but you said you didn't wait for, you were proactive. You didn't wait for someone to tell you what you're doing well and what you can improve, like the performance reviews or whatever. You took action. You ask constantly for feedback, and you're willing to hear some things that maybe are not so easy to hear.
Yeah.
And on top of that, to take action, to build a plan. So you took complete accountability for your growth.
Yes.
You did not wait for anyone else or rely on your manager to do that for you.
You know what? I'm so glad that you pulled that out of what I said, because I would say if I could identify a mistake that I saw people make more often than I would like to, it was waiting on someone else to do it. Even, when I think back to when I was managing those teams in my early days, typically I was managing a team of between 18 and 25 people. So lots of different personalities that you're dealing with. And just like I talked about, my experience having the performance evaluation, I was responsible for having that performance conversation with each person on my team. And I can remember a particular conversation early in my career. It was a woman. She was a minority. We weren't the same race, but she was a minority, and she had aspirations to move up the ladder. But at the end of that conversation, it was like, okay, well, Tamara, help me figure out what the path is to get from where I am to where I want to be. And by the way, I'm not even sure what exactly role that is, but she wanted me to take complete ownership for mapping out this plan for her, because evidently at a previous company, her manager had done that. And I stopped her right then and said, listen, the best advice that I can give you is never put yourself in a position where you're depending on someone else to figure out what your next role is and what the action plan is to get there. You need to take ownership, do the resource. I mean, we had amazingly all kinds of internal resources. There were career maps, and here are the different types of roles that you could do. Like, literally all it took was carving out a little bit of time on your lunch, going to the intranet site and doing some searching. And yes, it was going to mean that you were going to have to invest some time. There was going to be some trial and error, because there were like courses put together to give you an introduction to different things. So yeah, you might spend 15, 30 minutes and realize, wow, that was a complete waste, because that's not the job that I want to do. But I had to keep reminding her, this is your career.
Yeah.
Like, you have to take responsibility for this. I am absolutely willing to help you, but I need you to come back to our next conversation with more information that you're able to share right now, so that I can help you. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only time. It happened over and over again. People were expecting others to kind of take charge of their career for them. And I would be remiss if I did not say that I certainly had great mentors. And I would say not just sponsors, but advocates, people that were really willing to speak up for me in rooms when I was not there. But even so, I wasn't depending on those people to open doors for me. I wasn't just hoping that would happen. I built relationships with people that I knew were influential, and not just so that I could take from them, but hopefully so that I could also help them with their objectives. If they had a pet project or something that they were really passionate about, hey, I'm your girl. I am happy to come in early, stay late, spend extra hours, because I know if I am able to help you, then that law of reciprocity is a real thing. People tend to want to help people that help them. So even though they were speaking up for me in instances when I was not there, it wasn't just because I was a nice person. It was because of the relationship that I had built with them and the connections that we had had over time. So I took it as my responsibility to grow my career. So I set a goal. Like every 18 months, I wanted to be looking at another role, at least in the very early part of my career. Now, towards the last few years, things slowed down for me by choice. But early on, that was the goal. Every 18 months, I want to switch to a new role because I know that that's going to help me to grow. It's going to help my income. It's going to add to my resume. So I would encourage the women that are watching and listening to us, set a goal. Like, how often do you want to transition? And then the mentor that helped me to come up with that number said, okay, if your number is 18, 6 months prior to that, you need to start looking and having intentional conversations. And that strategy worked really well for me. Towards the end, I actually didn't have to apply for jobs. People were coming to me. But I truly believe that, of course, by God's grace, I do believe that I was blessed to be able to move up the ladder, but it also was the actions that I took in those early days, really taking ownership for my career.
Absolutely. So you took ownership. You also were you're very intentional about it and being strategic about it, right? Because we talked about relationships. Yeah. So you strategize like the people that you wanted to build a relationship with, not just your manager, because your manager is not enough. We all know that, especially as you grow up in your career.
Yeah.
And you're saying, oh, I want to build a relationship with those people. And as you said, how do you build relationship? You learn about these people. You learn about them, what they care about. You support them. You don't just expect them to support you. You give something and you get something, right? I mean, reciprocity, as you mentioned. And goal setting, which is another thing, right? There's something about goal setting when you set a goal, even if it looks like scary or unclear, how would I do that? It's powerful. I'll give an example. I remember that before we moved to the US, I went to look for a house, and it was during November. The house market was not like great, and I had a goal within a week to find us a rental, and I did find.
Wow!
I did find it. It could have not happened, right? I mean, because not everything was dependent on me, but because that was the goal, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And it's also set your mindset around it, right? When you set the goal,
100%.
In 18 months, I want to be at that level. So you're so focused around that, your mindset goes to that.
Yes.
And the chances that it will happen multiply.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more, because that mentor helped me to understand, hey, and they helped me to see, hey, this is your career. So if you want to make VP, like this is, let's come up with the goal. And that's what helped me to get to that place. But it also was very clear to me that once I set that goal, I needed to be focused on it and taking action on it on a regular basis. So it helped me to kind of chunk that 18-month down into, here's what I need to be doing every quarter. Here's where I need to be at 6 months. Here's where I need to be at 12 months. So it helped me to set milestones. And then it also helped me. One other thing that I would share as a tip is it helped me to figure out what my visibility plan needed to be, because I think that's another thing that many times women overlook. I did it very early in my career too, until I started paying more attention. Is I had a tendency sometimes to be so heads down, focused on the job and the project, that I didn't realize, hey, actually, you need to have that water cooler conversation. Sometimes you need to go to lunch. You need to go to the town hall meeting that you really don't want to go to because you probably could catch up on some work. But if you go to that meeting, or you go to the workshop that's happening, that's taking additional time out of your day, so-and-so is going to be there. And that's a strategic opportunity, like we just talked about, for you to have a conversation with someone that you otherwise would not have been able to have. And who knows where that conversation will go. So as you've shared, putting that goal out there helped me to constantly be thinking, what do I need to be doing? And am I on track? And if I'm not on track, okay, now I need to find a visibility opportunity this month because I haven't been anywhere. I've been focused on getting my work done. But if I want to meet this goal of getting that next role, I need to be networking. I need to be connecting with people.
Yeah. And I want to say something about visibility. This is something, Tam, I hear from so many women, I had challenged with it myself. We feel, for some reason, I'm generalizing, women feel very, very uncomfortable with it because we feel like we need to brag, we need to come and say me, and doing things that are artificial. It doesn't have to be that way. No. It just needs to be intentional. And as you said, like finding opportunities that are real, that make sense. Either, going for, as you said, coffee, lunch, town halls, whatever opportunities you have to meet people and to meet the people that are right for you to meet.
Yeah,
and sometimes
absolutely.
It's uncomfortable.
Oh yeah,
now do those things.
It's very uncomfortable. I will say, for the benefit of that woman, it's like, oh my gosh, that is so scary. I 100% get it. I am an introvert at heart. My corporate career is what helped me to develop what I call the ability to flex extroversion when needed. But who is Tam at her core? She is an introvert. She grew up shy. Many of those interactions just make me want to break out and sweat. So, you're going to have to, if that's you're going to have to do it afraid. And what got me through that is the reminder of, but wait, this is the goal that I had. So I had to make the goal bigger than my fear. And when I did that, then it helped me to be able to realize, okay, I don't love this, but this is a necessary step that I have to take if I'm going to reach this goal, because the chances of me being able to get that opportunity, if I just stay to myself and I never have those conversations, is very slim. Now, at the same time, one thing that I would give as a tip for that woman who maybe like me is an introvert at heart and prefers, to kind of recharge alone, big events and all of this kind of stuff is a little bit draining. But one of the things that I think we can remember is that often we are very good at one-to-one conversations. And so one of my strategies was, yes, I need to be a part of this big event, but what I really am focused on is who are the one or two people that I need to connect with. So now it took it from this big thing with hundreds sometimes in my world of people in it to my goal is to connect with this person and this person. And so then I lasered in on, if they were speaking, I lasered in on their part of the conversation. I took notes. And then my goal was to think of, okay, what is a question that I can ask them about what they shared? So then my goal, once this workshop or whatever it is over, is yes, there are tons of people around me, but my number one goal is to get to that person, have a one-on-one conversation, and ask the question that I came up with. So I think one of the things that we can do is make it more of a one-to-one type of situation, so it's a little less intimidating, and then be prepared. That was a trick that I learned. I can't remember. I think I took a class somewhere in corporate and they said, one of the best things that you can do is to ask questions. And I was like, thank you. That helps me so much because I'm always curious about people and curious about things, right? So now that I knew, okay, your job is to come up with a good question that you could ask, it became so much easier for me. So maybe that will help someone that is watching or listening.
That will help for sure, Tam. That was wonderful. And I'm also an introvert and I like your term, like flex extroversion. So I love that. I'm gonna borrow that from you, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, please do.
Because I'm an introvert as well, and and I think it's important to emphasize to the ladies that listen to us that yes, it gets uncomfortable sometimes, but you still gotta do it.
You got it. There's no way around it. There's no way around it, because if you don't do it, you are saying yes to being in the same exact role that you are in today. You are saying, I'm okay with my salary not increasing, And even bigger than that, I'm okay with the impact that I'm making, that this is it. It's not going to grow beyond this space. I think sometimes we want to believe that someone is going to swoop in and rescue us and make all the connections and all of that. And I've been blessed. That's happened a few times to me in my career, but I'll be honest, it was very late in my career at that point. I had been thankfully performing well for 15, 20 years at that point. So in the very early stages, especially, you cannot wait on someone to recognize your talent. You have to show people how talented you are. And it's not just doing a good job. That was a
Yeah,
thought
that's
that
for
I had
sure.
early on, is that, oh, well, if I do a good job, then that communicates that, I'm a great performer. But here's the thing. The reality is there are lots of people that are doing a good job. And one of the things that I learned, this may be disappointing, is sometimes the person that gets promoted is not the person that does the best job. That was a big eye-opening moment for me. It's like, wait a minute, they're not even actually that great at their job, but they did a really good job of being visible, and they did a really good job of making the right connections. And so there is some truth to the statement, it's not just what you know, but who you know. I came face to face with that realization early on, and it was so eye opening. But the reality is that it is true. So you cannot stay heads down. You cannot depend on doing a good job, because sometimes the person that does a good job isn't the one that gets promoted.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And this is something I truly believe in, and I work with a lot of women. And I can't believe we have been, it's been a wonderful,
Time
wonderful talking
flies.
with you. I want to make sure we just kind of mention your business, because you mentioned to me
Sure.
in our earlier conversation that in 2023 you started a business. So my first question would be, you're so successful. What led you to leave all that?
Yeah.
Comfortable job, probably a very high paying job, and to start a business, to go to that adventure.
Yeah. So, quick story. I actually had side hustles for about half of my corporate career. So, the best way that I can sum it up is that there was always something in me that was a little entrepreneurial, and I had a desire to build my own thing. But I also liked, transparently, the safety of corporate. I liked the regular salary. I liked moving up the ladder. So in 2023, it was really a situation where I came face to face with the reality that we only have so much time. I had supported my mom as she was going through her cancer journey. Unfortunately, she passed away in April of 2023. So, having been with her for 10 months as she was battling cancer, it really helped me to see that tomorrow is not promised. She had all these great plans for things that she was going to do when got to the magic number in her corporate career. Once she retired, she had all of these plans, and unfortunately many of those things she wasn't able to do. So one of the gifts that my mom gave me was the realization that whatever you want to do, you should go ahead and do it, because you don't know how much time you have. So after I got through the process of kind of not, I won't say I'm still, it's been a couple of years, I'm still grieving her passing, but the initial shock of grieving her passing said, well, you know what? One of the conversations that we had was about taking chances. And I was thinking, like, okay, well, what are some chances that I could take? And one of them was to say goodbye to that corporate career, be willing to be out there and like putting myself out there, which, as we talked about, I'm an introvert at heart,
Yeah.
really putting my all into building a business from the ground up, and recognizing that, hey, this could go really well, or this could completely bust, but being okay with that and not taking it as it was defining me as a person. Failure is an event, it is not a person. And so once I was able to really reflect on my mom's journey, the lessons that I learned from it, and recognize, hey, this is something that I really want to do. I'm getting older. I was going to be celebrating my 50th birthday soon. So it's like, I got to rip the Band-Aid off. I've got to do it. And so maybe there's someone that's watching and listening to us. Maybe you're like me. You've had a desire to build this business for a while. I can't tell you when the timing is, but I believe you will know when that time comes where you've got to make a decision. Sometimes we can. Yeah, I did it for 12 years. Sometimes you can kind of do a little bit of both. But there will probably become a time where, in order for you to really do everything that you want to do, you're going to have to take a chance.
Absolutely. First of all, my condolences on your mom
Thank you.
passing. I know it's been 2 years, but I'm sure it still hurts.
Still hard. Yeah, it's still hard.
And definitely, I mean, taking chances and being willing to put yourself out there, especially for us introverted people, it's not easy. And as a business owner, I know that as well. You need to put yourself out there every day.
Yes. But, it's been fun. There have been wins, there have been setbacks along the way, but I've learned from all of them. And just like I shared with the audience that, that technique that I learned about, okay, even though I'm in this big room, how do I identify someone that I want to connect with and focus on, working and connecting with them one-on-one? I ended up doing the same thing in my business now. I figure out like who is the ideal person that I want to work with. And then I look for those people in certain spaces, whether it's online and social media or it's out at networking events. And I just do the same thing. I focus on having that one-to-one conversation. And that's worked for me. So, I think one of the keys is recognizing where your strengths are. When I first stepped out of corporate and said, okay, I'm going to build this business, I had a lot of people giving me advice. And I'm not saying that advice is not helpful. We need advice. I couldn't be the person that I am today without others helping me. At the same time, you've got to be able to recognize when the advice is for you or it's just informational, right? Because sometimes what's being suggested isn't a good fit for your personality. It's not a good fit for your strengths. It actually would amplify your weaknesses instead of downplaying them. And that's one of the mistakes that I made early, is just, trying to do it in a way that wasn't consistent with who I am and where my strengths are. But once I recognized, oh, okay, you're really good at building relationships, more of a one-to-one than being a part of this big thing, then that's when things started to shift for me. So hopefully that will help someone that's watching.
I'm sure it will, Pam. And I really enjoyed talking with you. And before we end the call, tell our listeners, the ladies that listen to us, where they can find you.
Yeah. Well, I would love to connect with you. The platform that I'm most active on these days is LinkedIn. So you can find me there. Tamara Jackson on LinkedIn. Also, my podcast, The Beacon Show, is where I get to sit down with amazing people in Christian leadership, varying from ministry leaders to nonprofits to leading multi-million-dollar corporations, as well as those that are in the arts, that are film directors and actors and actresses. So I'm blessed to be able to talk to some really amazing people. You can find information on that podcast at beaconship.co. And then because I'm a person that's always into new things, I've been passionate about AI since 2021. I was an early adopter. So I also am honored to lead an AI company that focuses on helping solopreneurs and small teams that don't have the budget to hire a salesperson be able to get some of those sales follow-up tasks done. And that business is called Lead Reviver. You can find us at leadreviver.pro. It's been awesome being here with you today and sharing with your audience. I hope that I've said something that helps some women out there to be intentional about their career and their business.
Absolutely, Tam. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode with Tam. I hope you liked it. And before you, I just want to share what's coming up next week on From a Woman to a Leader. So next week on From a Woman to a Leader, I'm speaking with Cecilia Borg. Cecilia is an experienced CTO and transformation leader, and she has led product and engineering organizations at places like Spotify, Oracle, and more. And we are tackling a question that I hear all the time. How technical do you actually need to be to lead engineering well? And Cecilia breaks down what engineering managers really get paid for. She also talks about the manager equals failed developer myth and why it's so demanding and what to do when leadership expectations are unclear or unrealistic. So, if you're stepping into management or maybe you are already there and you feel the pressure, you want to hear this episode. I want to invite you to subscribe to From a Woman to a Leader. Share it with a woman in tech who's ready for her next level. I'm on a mission to reach more women in tech and support you all. So please support me in that mission. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.